to the second episode of our podcast. I'm Sierra, this is Nelnie and Eileen. If it's your first time here, we have a 4-part series podcast for Mental Health Awareness Month. So episode 2 is going to be on coping and thriving with counsellors.
That's us.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how counsellors cope and deal with challenges,
Stress.
Because our self-care is a commitment to our clients too.
Today will be covering basically the challenges that we face, as Sarah has mentioned, and then we will also be talking a little bit about the coping mechanisms that we use, which may also be applicable to you, our listeners, that you may actually also apply in your life or in your practices.
The purpose of this podcast is for you to understand how we take care of ourselves in order for us to perform effectively in our job as well, because we are humans first before counsellors.
Without further ado, we're going to be moving on.
I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but there are clients who would ask me how do I do it? How do I sit in sessions and see one client after the other and listen to different types of challenges, different types of issues, and whether it affects me?
You guys will probably know this. We also have our mentors who are very firm about the self-care aspect of the job. We are taught to remember that you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of them. So I think most of us try to do that, but I think the hazard in the counseling profession or the helping profession in general is that a lot of us join it because you care, and when you care, sometimes you forget that self-care aspect, and then when you forget it for too long, that's where things also start to turn a little bit bad for us.
Because it is true, it can feel like a limited resource, like how much you can care and where you can provide that care. And when it's for counsellors, the care is required for us to provide at work. So in the work aspect, it's a resource, quite a bit of that resource you take up for the clients, right? And then that's where it can feel like, it can feel like, okay, I need to save it for the clients. And then that's where it's easy to, forego the self-care part. But today is about addressing that regardless how do we still do it.
And it's very important because it's in a therapy session, we are the tool, right? If it's, for example, you have a desk job working on a computer, you need to make sure the computer is working well. It's updated, it's serviced, because that is the tool. So in sessions with clients, we are the tool, so we need to make sure that we are also functioning.
Yeah,
and
the tools
healthy.
are working.
Yeah. Realize that part of it is the listening, then part of it is actually we're still thinking. The brain is kind of like the swan on the face is like the swan on top of the water, but the brain is like the feet under the water, which is just, how can I help this person? Where do I take this direction now? What do we do? You're processing at the same time you're listening.
Certain things, throughout the weekend, something reminds me of a client or something that could help that specific case. It is on our minds.
Yeah. So that's a good point about I think this is where the boundary setting comes in, where for me what happens is I do sometimes that happens, I'm like, this is this reminds me of whatever, and then I tell myself okay, not now, it's good that you think about it, but you put it aside, because you are doing something else, you're on your personal time, this is not the time to think about it. And then I'm like, okay, I really have to kind of remind myself that this is the boundary, you cannot let it seep into your personal life.
I think that's where also by setting those boundaries, and we also get to conserve our energy because it can lead to burnout if we don't do that, we don't set that, because like you said, it's a switch that is a little hard to turn off. It's very, because it's related, as you said, right, we are the tool, so it's very related to the skills that we already have, the knowledge we already have, so it's always there, it's always up there. So to switch it off, so that involves analyzing certain things, evaluating, and then sometimes certain things just spark, certain connection happens up here, and then it reminds you of this is related to this case, and I need to remember, clock that, just stamp it, that sort of thing. And then sometimes you also worry about it shouldn't go out of the window, so how do I remember this? And then sometimes it's very easy.
The whole burnout thing, and then relating it back to last week's topic about how the client's best interest is in mind, and we do reach that point, and then we're no longer actually helping them. So it's needed to turn off that switch.
It's also good to switch it off because like you mentioned with the computer analogy and all that, if you overclock it, it burns out, right? So then we get that fatigue, that mental fatigue, that compassion fatigue that we were told, that where we just basically you reach a point where you cannot anymore, you literally just cannot. And I think in terms of relating to students, for students it probably be that bit where they probably come in to college and they start off their first semester, they're like really eager and they're just going for it. I want to score well and all that, and they work and work and work and work, and then like I said, they forget to go out, they forget to make friends, they forget to take some time to just relax, and suddenly they find like maybe in the third or fourth semester their grades are dropping, and somehow they just can't bring themselves to care, and that's where you're hitting like the burnout points already, and it's just pretty much the same. It's the same. It's that same fatigue that they're going through that we would go through. And I think one of the things that I've noticed for college in particular, I mean this is across the board, but in colleges in particular, is the ability to get the students to be comfortable to come in, because a lot of them, they know we're around, they know about the existence of counsellors, but sometimes I get the feeling like they're a little bit reluctant to come in. I'm not sure which stigma it is that is stopping them, but I think that's one of the main challenges that also kind of takes up the mind space, which is like how can we make it safer or like easier, or at least make them more willing to step in to see us. That was just something that I got reminded of when you talked about like the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. How to make it more welcoming, and how to also, because a key part of therapy is also having the consistent sessions with clients, right? When the progress comes into our mind, like when we try to analyze how well a certain client is progressing, and then like in terms of consistency, when that is a bit of an issue, so a lot of brain work goes into that as well, and how do we maintain consistency, and how to make sessions more productive and things like that.
We work for your benefits. We always work for the client's benefit.
Yeah, and we chose this. We want to do it.
Absolutely.
It's something of we have our own ways of like managing it so that we can perform and help you guys in the best way possible.
True.
Yeah, and that is why we are actually talking about how we deal with it, because it can feel like, oh my god, these are like massive challenges, but also to point out like, yes, with this big challenges in front of us, these coping strategies work, and which is why we are able to continue to do it, and then we actively choose to do it because we want to.
And there's like quite a number of them. Some they're not actually so special that only counsellors use it. So we'll get into that, right? And you'll probably find things that you are doing or things that you can do.
Right. So let's dive right into it. The specific coping strategies, or rather self-care. And I think when the whole topic of self-care comes in, right, there's always this idea of like, oh, something luxurious, do this fancy bubble bath stuff. It is a form of self-care, but that is not that's not just it. There's a lot of simple things. It doesn't have to be as luxurious. There are certain things that doesn't even require any cost that can be a self-care. So we're going to share a bit of that today, and share mine first. So mine is something that takes minimal effort. So because of like how fast-paced life can be, right? So it's just about like when I get through the day, I'll just look for things that are pleasant. And I share this quite a bit with my clients too. Like how they can use this strategy as well. This thing called glimmers, looking for glimmers. So what are glimmers, right? And the easy way to explain is it's opposite of triggers. So triggers is basically anything and everything that can trigger you. So glimmers are basically anything and everything that is pleasant, that brings up any pleasant emotion, just brings up joy in you, or just something nice to soak in, right? So it can be anything that you see, hear, smell. The way I do it is like or try my best to remind myself, like throughout the day, try to look for glimmers, things that are pleasant. So simple things like sky's always there. And just looking at the sky, and sometimes it just looks different every time, and then for that is very pleasant. The biggest glimmer you guys can actually like, it's always there, it's always available. All you need to do is take a look, take away your phone for a while and look up the sky, and there you have it, a glimmer.
You could actually just take a break for a moment if you're watching this on your phone. Take a look at the sky.
You might see birds or clouds of different shapes.
If you see rain, it's also good. Rain is nice if you're at home and it's cozy and it's comfortable. It's also very cooling.
That you said that it's always there. It's like nature, like I was born in this world and I leave this world with the sky. I can just rely on it when I need to. It's very nice.
Exactly. It's always accessible. Even at night, just, these days it's hard to find stars thanks to light pollution. I'm very bitter about it, but there's always going to be, sometimes the moon, looking at the way the clouds move. All of that can be very calming, to me at least, when you mentioned birds. Like, I just love watching the way the birds go, and they're just like so free, and something about that is very calming to me. So that's my self-care. Zero cost.
What about you, Sarah?
Okay, mine has a little bit of cost. So reading is like an escape. Basically, I like to step into this world of like this character and just forget about my life for a bit. Along with like, you know, what you said about the glimmers, it's also about the little things. Like for example, the other day, like during the weekend 2 days ago, I walked by this like plant and there was like little flowers coming out, and for some reason I just felt like, let me just go up to that flower and like smell the flower. So it's like as cliche as they're like, you know, stop to smell the roses kind of. It hits you that, like what you said, right? It's always there. This is nature. So for me, I think self-care is very much about just stepping out of like my role, my responsibility and everything, and going into this other sort of like escape where I get to like dream a little, go back into being like a basic human being and just being grounded. So that's something.
Just focusing on the little things. It's always the little things, and sometimes those are the things that they are always there, but we overlook them.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, I have, like Sarah, I do like to read. I'm still keeping it at no cost because I read on the internet. Okay, so I read books, I read novels online, but I also like the escapism, as you mentioned, right? So very old passion of mine is manga and anime. That's where my greatest escape is. But sometimes I find that one of the other self-care routines that I really do like is music. And what happens is, if I'm in a certain kind of mood, or I find that I've reached a certain peak in maybe my emotional level, I tend to look for certain kinds of music. So there will be days when I purposefully look for music that makes me cry, and you know, I'll sit there and I'll listen to all this and I'll just like really have a good cry, and then after that I'll just move on. So yeah, that's what I do for self-care sometimes, like in terms of emotional care.
Yeah, breaking it down into specific emotional care and then like catering to that need, I think that is it's a great idea, and definitely something that we can get creative about actually when we think about what is self-care to us.
To add that, the whole bubble bath thing is also very me.
It is, and it can be.
Like lotions or like our nails, right? It's these little things. So it is also me, but you know, there are also all the other things that we talked about. It doesn't need to be this. Yeah.
And this is where like sometimes it can feel like if we box self-care as just this, it is that, but there's also a whole bunch of other things outside also, so you don't limit yourself and feel like, oh no, I can't do those things, or I'm not interested in those things, so I don't have a self-care very much. But it is anything and everything that you find that's pleasant, and it's also the littlest of things. And of course, at the same time, if you do have those fancy things that you do enjoy, of course, by all means, no one is stopping you.
Don't it's not, you know, no one's calling you out for it. We're just mentioning that it doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to be luxurious. Self-care comes in many shapes and forms.
Right, so if you want to imagine what makes up our mental health, right, you can imagine this iceberg. What we see at the tip of the iceberg is like things like you know, what helps with mental health. We always say like obviously therapy, and then for certain conditions, medication. So we always associate mental health with those two things. Yes, definitely, but underneath that iceberg, underneath that water, right, there's this whole other things that make up our mental health. Mainly is self-care habits. So what we choose for our self-care is very important. So there's those things and the things that we do on a daily basis, so those other habits as well, and the way we think and what shapes our mind. So things like the amount of things we consume, like, you know, mentally, so like the things that we watch, the media that we consume. So all of that shape our mindset, so that makes up our mental health. So if you do have like practices like meditation, you know, mindfulness, those make up our mental health as well. So as I'm like naming these things, you can imagine this iceberg, and underneath that surface of water, these are all these things that actually make up the mental health. So in that, it involves having like a support system, you know, connections with family, friends, people that you like. It's all of those things actually that contributes. We know that these are the things that makes up our mental health, right? So it's about asking ourselves like what kind of habits we can incorporate, and that involves like either you can do it individually or with your support system, with people that you have around you.
The bottom of the iceberg can really just be like a million things.
Yeah, it's like the ocean essentially. It's a very good analogy using the iceberg, because the underlying part of it is like the ocean. There's like all these things there, and it's like undiscovered, and you know, what works for you may not work for other people, but it works for you, and that's the most important thing. I think one of the, talking about copings, is like for clients, like for our students, they get to see us for therapy. I've had people ask me like, what about the counselors? What do you do? Like, is it just is it just coping mechanisms? And the thing is, it's like, no, we also do go for therapy. Counselors do go for therapy. We it's like a doctor, you can't cure yourself. We also have peer support, we have supervision where we consult or we share among ourselves when we are feeling stuck or we're feeling blocked or we come across a particularly difficult case, which we then, we talk about consultation with our peers. Everything is anonymous. There are no names. Essentially, the issue of the discussion is basically, I have an issue or this particular problem and I'm not sure how to approach it. And it's a sharing of ideas between counselors. That's what we do. So that's another coping mechanism for us so that we don't get stuck. So everything that is done is to make sure that, we don't burn out overthinking something, basically, or overthinking a case and then, failing to provide the best care.
Okay, so speaking of that iceberg, right, I wonder, if there's anything else that you think, how does it look like for you guys that goes into that bottom of that iceberg?
Maybe self-awareness. I think that's pretty important, to be aware so that you know what's happening. Because if you're not, then you don't really know what you need to work on. So I think, self-awareness, probably, you mentioned the support system, so that there's that as well.
Yeah, self-awareness together with emotional regulation. But the more little physical things, right, is, for example, before a session, making sure I drink enough water so I'm not thirsty, or things like that, making sure that the room is set up nicely, the temperature is right. I think that also is it's self-care because then I'm comfortable to help the client. And something that helps a lot for me is also learning to trust the client. So after the session ends, instead of being preoccupied with worrying about their specific case or how they're doing and things like that, trusting that they're well equipped, they're capable, and they can handle things that are thrown at them until they make it back for the next session and things like that. So that helps in terms of preparing for sessions.
Yeah, I agree on that actually, especially the part aside from doing physical things, like that mental thing that we can do for ourselves in taking care of ourselves, that falls under self-care, is also mentally letting go of certain things, letting go of the need to control. That adds to certain stress and anxiety. So I think you put it really well, in a way that is us trusting our clients that they are equipped with the things that we've been discussing in sessions. So they are well equipped, and then by letting go, it means trusting them. So that usually helps me also.
I think it's a very good way to put it, because we can't carry over the previous time into the next session, because that's a totally different time now. I think one of the things that does help with that is something that we hear about a lot nowadays. I think we practice it quite a lot, which is called mindfulness, which comes hand in hand with the self-awareness. Mindfulness is about being present, being mindful of what you're doing, being mindful of your body, how you're feeling, what you're thinking. So I think that's really interesting in terms of self-care.
So a lot of that goes under, and you can keep adding more things to that bottom of iceberg, but essentially it's the things that contribute positively to our well-being.
So I think we're reaching about the end of our podcast for today, but we have covered pretty much a good bit of what we hoped that we told you we were going to cover, which is essentially the challenges that counselors face and the coping mechanisms available to us and how we do manage our stress. And I hope that in this you also managed to pick up anything that maybe you could apply to yourselves, our dear listeners. I like the fact that we can incorporate activity into it. There is, when you're talking about mindfulness, there are things like we call mindful walking. So you can do that when you're walking. Mindful activities where you're actually just kind of taking note of your surroundings. Like in Sierra's experience, when she was walking, she just saw a plant budding with flowers. That's actually being mindful of your surroundings. So the mindful practice is not just about sitting and being still. It's just really about being more aware, being very present in what's happening around you as it happens.
Something easy to try is mindful eating. I feel like a lot of people don't do this because when you're eating, you're just hungry and you're just just eating to finish it and fill yourself. But if you were to just mindfully eat and taste every flavor and feel every texture, and that's something interesting to practice, especially if you're eating on your own.
Yeah,
That's true.
It sounds very calming actually. So something that I like is mindful coffee drinking.
Oh, yes.
I can attest to the two of them. Very mindful when they drink their coffee.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's from touching the cup and then feeling the temperature of the coffee on the mug, smelling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a fancy coffee, you get to dissect the flavors.
Yeah.
So basically, that's about it for today. But I do want to mention, if you all are interested if you feel like perhaps you want to try these, you're not sure how to go about it, you can always come by to see you. You can make an appointment with us, sit with us, even if it's just for a single session, or for a few. As you learn these techniques, try what fits you. We're always here to help out, to guide you if you need, give you suggestions if you're looking for certain techniques because certain ones you've tried don't work for you or don't work anymore. Please feel free to drop in. So we hope to see you in our third podcast, which will be our second last, after which the last podcast is dedicated to all of you, our viewers and listeners, and whatever questions that you would have posted to us in all these preceding weeks. So I wish all of you a nice day.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to us, and keep watching this space for our upcoming episodes.
Bye.